Okay, welcome back to the No Filter Friday show. I, of course, am John Canopic. Thank you guys very, very much for tuning in, wherever you may be listening or viewing this from, be it either on YouTube, Spotify, Podbean, Apple, Amazon, iHeart, wherever you're catching your podcast feeds. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I actually had this recorded yesterday, but we had a little bit of a technical issue where apparently my new keyboard and mouse that are both wired gaming peripherals shorted out my USB hub, so I had to plug them into a different port because it was cutting things in and out to the point where my camera and therefore audio went out about 9 minutes into my recording yesterday, so it sounded actually quite horrible. So we're going to be doing this again, and I'm going to be re-recording this now, so this is take 2. And hopefully this one comes across a lot better, and I haven't been having any malfunctions with the mouse or the keyboard, so we should be good to go here going forward with this episode and beyond. And as things go along, we'll be definitely upgrading our setup. But for right now, we're making do with what we've got. So thank you guys so much for sticking with me and for all of the comments and feedback and support and viewership throughout this crazy insanity that we're calling the No Filter Friday show. I greatly appreciate it. Of course, you can always reach out to me on all social media platforms at NFFSHOW. For those of you in the military, veterans such as myself, it is November Foxtrot, Sierra Hotel, Oscar, Whiskey. So you can follow me on all social media platforms at NFFSHOW and you can keep track of things going on here with the podcast. As you guys are well aware, over these last 4 weeks, we have done various episodes linking things together that are very crucial to the state of the world as a whole, because as I've mentioned multiple times, and a lot of people tend to agree with this thought process, we have a very toxic world at this point. It's been that way for a very long time, and unfortunately it's not going to get better until we start figuring out ways to get the toxicness out of the world's bloodstream. Of course, we started off episode 1 of this journey with the political landscape, which is the biggest part of the toxicity, where prior to anything else I could think of, that it actually is the source. The biggest part of where the toxicity came from was the government and the corruption and all of the behind the scenes goings on with the powers that be, the people with the big pocketbooks that have their hands involved in all sorts of different avenues. And since they infiltrated the government and at the highest levels, that toxicity has bled down into other aspects of the world, starting with episode 2, where we went in and did a deeper dive into mainstream media and late night, especially the late night hosts and the late night landscape of our media, and how the toxicity has infiltrated that and corrupted the hosts and the whole news media as a whole, needing a massive overhaul. And going on from there, we moved down to episode 3, which was social media. And again, it's just a streamlined process from top to bottom. We got the government at the top, down into mainstream media, down into social media such as Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Reddit, Instagram, TikTok, etc., etc., and the toxicity bleeding into there, and having all of the keyboard warriors out there who feel like they can just bash and smear people left and right without any kind of accountability whatsoever. That they feel like they have free reign to take anyone's opinion that might not be the same as theirs and just smash them against the wall, which is a horrible way to live, but that's exactly the way that they've been functioning, because of the fact that there's been really no accountability and no policies in place to restrict that kind of thoughts. Even though, we are free to express our opinions and feel what we want to feel, I feel that, bullying has no place in society, nor should it. And then from there, we moved down, again, all intertwined, all interconnected. We moved down into last week's episode that I got to collaborate with the hilarious and very intelligent gentleman from the Geeks from the Multiverse podcast. You can reach out and view all of their podcasts and content at GFTM Podcast. That is Golf Foxtrot Tango Mike Podcast. And you can reach out to them on all of their social media platforms. They are extremely hilarious. They're very well versed. They brought a lot of good content and fresh perspective to the table because they also are veterans such as myself. They have a lot of experience with social media and mental health as a whole. They're fathers like me. So we had a great time chatting last week and just, riffing back and forth on the state of mental health and how that also needs an overhaul because of the toxicity that has bled down from all of the other previous sources that I just mentioned. So with that being said, with the first 4 episodes now in the can and out there on social media, we look at this and we go, okay, there are obviously other aspects of the world that have had toxicity bled into them. But now, at least from the standpoint of the main 4, the question is now that we know what the problem is, how do we fix it? What are the solutions? What are the ideas and suggestions that we could come up with to get the toxicity out of the world's bloodstream? Let's just say we are the doctors and the very sick earth is our patient. How do we start? Where do we start? And what steps do we need to take in order to get this under control? So with that being said, we've got to go at the very beginning. And like I mentioned on the previous episode, you're looking at this, if you look at this from the perspective of a fire hose and you're trying to cut off the supply of liquid flowing, in this case, toxicity, toxic sludge, if you will. The only way to do that is to not kink the hose further down the line and just hope that it holds and that'll fix the problem, because eventually the pressure is going to continue to build and it's going to blast right through that kink. So you need to turn it off at the spigot, at the source, at the very top. And then that will in turn, stop the stream going down forward and allow the world to start healing and get out of this toxic environment that it's been in for a very long time. So where do we start? Pretty simple. You got to start at the top. But the government and the government corruption from big pharma and the powers that be and the shadow governments and those with the big pocketbooks, your Bill Gateses of the world, your Jeff Bezoses of the world, your George Soroses of the world, and people like that, because that's been where everything has started. They infiltrated politics, and they've got people under their thumb, from the Clintons to, don't want to talk about them too much, but the Clintons to the Obamas to even the Bushes are not exempt from this. And that's just in the United States. Obviously, there's corrupt politicians all over the world. Again, that's why this is a global problem. This is not just a domestic issue that we're dealing with and trying to fix. This is the world as a whole. So looking at it from that perspective, how do we fix things? How do we stop this corruption? Well, first things first, you got to get the pocketbooks out of it. The problem is you've got all of these billion-dollar donors and things trying to influence elections and influence politicians who have the ability to run the country and ultimately drive it into the ground as well. So we need to cut them off. You need to get them out of politics. And obviously that's something that is a massive undertaking. It might not ever be possible, but you got to start somewhere. So the first way to do that is to install the term limits and the age limits that we had brought up previously. Because right now you've got no term limits in place for congressmen, for politicians outside of the presidency. And because of that, you've got people there who are complacent. You've got people there who are easily corruptible because they know, hey, my seat's solid. No one's going to be challenging me for this because I have these deep pocketbook ties to the people that are my masters, and I am the slave of them. And I know that I'm able to do what I want to do, and I'm sitting here financially comfortable because of these people that are funding me. So they get complacent and they get corrupt. You've got your Nancy Pelosi's, you've got your Chuck Schumer's, you got your Chris Massey's, you've got your AOC's, you've got your Hakeem Jeffries, you've even got your Mitch McConnell's, and you know it's not to one side of the aisle. There are corruptness on both the Republican side as well as the Democratic side. So you got to get that out of the way, and that installing those term limits would be a good start, because now you can't be in there 30, 40, 50 years and making things even more toxic so that, you know, you can just continue to funnel things down into those other mediums that I mentioned earlier. You're going to be stuck, and you're going to have to basically fend for yourself within that short window that you have to govern, or to be a congressman or a senator, or whatever it is that you're running for as far as office goes. And then you have to also install age limits. You gotta have age limits. And no offense to Trump, but you can't have 80 plus year old people in charge of the country, especially from the highest office in the land. There has to be age limits. You have to be under a certain age to be able to be the president of the United States. Because not just, you know, there are people out there who are like, oh, my grandfather is 85 and he's sharp as a tack. And that might be great, but that's the minority. The majority of the mental states of seniors and people of advanced ages is declining at a very rapid rate the older they get. So, you know, by the time you're done with your 4 years or 8 years, if you're able to maintain the hold of the presidency for 2 consecutive terms, or, you know, 2 terms in the terms of Trump, you know, in 16 and 24, because we all know what happened in 20. We're not going to revisit that right now at this point. But by the time you're done with 4 years or 8 years, and the toll, not just your age itself, but the physical and mental toll that being the most powerful individual on the planet takes on your mental health and your physical health, it's going to wreck you. And if you're already in your 60s, 70s, 80s, that's almost a death sentence at that point. Just take a look at our previous president, although we do know who was running the show from 20 to 24. But that being said, so we need to have those term limits, and we need to have those age limits in place. In addition to that, and I know that my Canadian friends and my friends over in the UK, you guys are dealing with your own battles in Parliament and things like that, but I feel that having more than a 2-party system here could also help towards giving people more options out there, more flavors. And again, I'm not going to talk about flavors because TikTok decided to take down one of my clips about the big pharma and the 31 flavors, even though I said nothing of any inaccuracies out there. They still felt that it was too strong and they needed to take it down. So thank you, TikTok, for that. But with party lines, I feel that if we had more than just 2 flavors, more than just chocolate and vanilla in there, we would be able to have more people stepping forward with their own beliefs and their own agendas and fresh perspectives. You know, obviously we've tried to do that before, as recently as, you know, Ralph Nader with the Green Party, Ross Perot with the Independent Party, that guy in Utah who tried to, I might actually take the state of Utah over, you know, Kamala and Trump, but obviously that didn't happen. We had, you know, when we first started the country, we didn't have Republicans and Democrats only. You know, we had libertarian parties and we had other bureaucratic groups available. And I feel that, you know, that could help, because if you have more than just 2 sides running for office, you're going to give people more abilities to look at different viewpoints and maybe find someone who's going to bring our country back to the shape that it needs to be and put us back on track. So, you know, they shouldn't be afraid to have multiple parties out there. But people right now, their voices, they're afraid that if they try to step up and they try to be outgoing with their beliefs and things, they're going to get squashed like a bug. by the main parties, by the elephants and by the donkeys that are currently out there. And that's a sad state of affairs, because our voices shouldn't be muted just because of the fact that, you know, we're not red, or we're not blue, we're you know, purple, or we're orange, or we're brown, or whatever color we want our party affiliation to be. We shouldn't be afraid to let our voices be heard. And again, this goes back into the toxicity that I was mentioning. You know, if we cut off the funding from this corrupt politicians, or you have these people in these smaller grassroots campaigns that aren't taking funds from the corruptness and are running on better platforms and stronger platforms and getting their voices out there, and they'd be able to do that more if mainstream media wasn't corrupted with the toxic sludge. If social media wasn't corrupted with the toxic sludge, you would be able to have their voices be more amplified out there and give people more chances to get to know them, get to see their platforms, and maybe, hey, you could turn things on its head, and you could finally see, you know, hey, we're starting to get people in office now who aren't immediate DC cronies that are just a slave to the dollar bill of those higher up and in the shadows. So we look at that, and if you go, okay, and now that if you're able to do that, and you're able to get the toxic sludge cleared out from the top slot there, you can then move down to slot number 2, which is, of course, mainstream media, where all of the amplified voices of the big pocketbook, big pharma, shadow government people are letting their nefarious agendas be heard through mouthpieces such as Stephen Colbert, such as Jimmy Fallon, not so much, such as the biggest homer of them all, Jimmy Kimmel, and people like that. Because right now, if you go on any of these TV shows and you watch them, unless you're a blind sheep that just eats up everything mainstream media says with a spoon, and you're so infected with the sludge that no matter what, they're speaking gospel and everything else is bad. Orange man bad, red side bad, whatever the case is. Everything anti what they're telling you on TV is bad. You're not doing yourself a good service by blindly just following along with them and just accepting everything they say is gospel. So what needs to happen from slot 2, the mainstream media aspect, is, first off, you need to get the stations themselves under control, and not the control that they're currently under. Your ABCs, your NBCs, your CBSs, your CNNs, your Fox News, your CNBCs, your MSNBCs. You need to get them back under non-corrupt control. Back to the days of late night comedians just being there to enlighten you and bring on celebrities to play some games and talk about their current projects and send you off to bed on a good, relaxing, happy note. Because you're not getting that right now on CBS. On CBS, you're getting Colbert shilling all of his political garbage that the corruptness is funneling down to him. After Colbert right now, you don't even have any more shows, because Craig Ferguson was on there and he did an incredible job. He was not very political at all, and he focused on what was most important, which was a comedy late night show with celebrities where he was just having fun and not taking things too seriously, because he knew that was what he was there to do. But then you moved over and you brought in, when he left, you brought in Corden. And Corden, unfortunately, was funneled with the same toxic sludge that Colbert has been infected with. And then Corden decided, he actually logically decided, even though if you watch any videos and do any deep dives on Corden from a British perspective, you can see why they were glad he left the UK. And that's why, why people here in the States weren't too keen to him. Except for the blindless people who, again, were fed into him from Colbert. But when Corden decided to actually do the logical thing and say, hey, you know what? And I don't know if this was the true reason, but this is the reason he gave. He decided that he was leaving and ending the Late Late Show because he wanted to spend more time with his family, because his family was growing up and getting older, his kids were getting older, and he wanted to be more present in their lives, and he wanted to go back and do other things with them, to have more time for them. And I totally get that, and I respect that. If that is the true reason why he left and ended the show, I respect that. I respect the hell out of that. But instead of them trying to find another corporate shill that they could implant in there, Colbert decided, hey, let's throw up a game show, and they brought in After Midnight. Although the original At Midnight with Chris Hardwick on Comedy Central did so much better, and again was a comedy game show with comedians doing things off the top of their head. Whereas at After Midnight, because this was a Stephen Colbert production, it unfortunately still had some political undertones to it, and because of that, it failed. And Taylor Tomlinson, she's an incredibly talented comedian. She decided, I was having more fun doing stand-up, and I want to go back to doing that. So I'm no longer going to do the show. And they couldn't find anyone to take the show over, so they ended the show, and now it's late night programming instead. But you've got to be able to get back to the days of traditional comedian late night television, talking to celebrities, playing some games with them, and leaving the politicalness out of it, because it's seeped in to CBS with Colbert. It's seeped into NBC with Seth Meyers and Fallon. Not so much, but Fallon does have his moments. And it's absolutely seeped in to ABC with the biggest homer and shill, Jimmy Kimmel, who is a absolute waste. If you want to waste an hour and fall asleep on a bad note, tune into his show. But ABC doesn't care, because they're getting all the money they need, and they could give two flips less about the ratings, which is horrible. But you're a television station. You should always care about ratings, but they don't care. But you need to get back to comedians just doing what they were meant to do in that slot, and sending people off on good notes, rather than pushing your political rhetoric down their throats, because that's what your corporate masters are telling you to do. It would make things way easier for people to absorb and take in if they're there listening to what Tom Cruise has going on with his next Mission Impossible movie, or you've got Gerard Butler coming on talking about the amazing, incredible How to Train Your Dragon live action remake, which was phenomenal, by the way. I highly recommend you guys check it out with your families. But bring that back, because instead, you've got like all of these shows now that had so much promise, and all these people that had so much promise that are no longer there because of the corruptness of mainstream media, and it's horrible. So if you can get back to that, if you can get the shows under control and get these things back where they used to be in the days, again, as I mentioned previously, of David Letterman, of Jay Leno, of Johnny Carson, of what Nightline was on ABC after your local news was on, things would be a lot better. Nightline was actually Nightline legitimately was a political show that was on after local news. It was giving you the new political and news-related, world-related news goings-ons of the day and of the moment. That's fine. That's perfect. That's exactly what that show is there intended to do. The Tonight Show was never intended to be political. The Late Show was never intended to be political. The Late Late Show, now it's no longer around, was never intended to be political. The Seth Meyers now run Late Show was never intended to be political, but now it is. And the majority of the time, that's what you're going to see, especially with their monologues at the start of their shows. It's all political based. It's all bashing the red side because it's the blue side that's passing down the sludge. Because if you watched from 2020 to 2024, I guarantee you didn't see them bashing Biden and the auto pen people and the true puppet masters. They weren't bashing them because that's who they were funded by and are funded by. So you got to get back into the days of traditional late night medium with the true late night comedians there doing their stuff, because otherwise that's never going to work, and you're never going to be able to get the voices out there of those other political parties that want to get their platforms and their messages heard. And that would be a perfect way for them to do it on channels that are specifically there for political means. CNN, obviously, cable news network. It's a news network. Fox News, even though I don't trust either one of these guys, MSNBC, and CNBC, all of them are political news channels. If you want to get your political crap out there, that's the spot to do it. But the problem is with the corrupt people, they know that, okay, the viewership of those channels, CNN, especially lately, Fox News, CNBC, MSNBC, and all of them, they're not bringing in as many viewers, as many eyeballs as the mainstream ABC, NBC, CBS channels are. So we have to get our message out into the biggest spot possible. So we're going to infiltrate these people, and then now we've got them under our thumb too, which is horrible, but that's how they're funneling their message. But if you can get that toxicity out of there, if you can get the main channels back to the way things were, and relegate all the political crap to the political channels, that will go a long way towards going towards detoxifying the environment of mainstream media, and getting and be more of a cure-all for that. Once you're able to do that, once you're able to get that little piece of the puzzle squared away, you can then move on to slot number 3, which of course is now social media. A bigger, or not as big of a thumbprint, not as big of a thumbprint as what mainstream media is. But social media, the days of America Online, the days of the original Facebook, the days of MySpace, where you could just go on, chit chat with your friends at the end of the day, let them know, how your school day was, what plans you have for the weekend, what your thoughts are about, the latest movies coming out and stuff like that, or albums coming out. Those days are gone. And unfortunately, we could bring them back, but it's hard to do because, again, of all this toxic sludge funneling down from the top into mainstream media, now down into social media. And it's infected social media in a grand scale. Twitter used to be, you could have open conversations with people and you could look at different perspectives and go back and forth. Whereas now, if you try to put your opinion up at all, you're going to get absolutely bashed and you're going to get absolutely slaughtered by keyboard warriors out there who feel like they just need to smear everybody regardless. Just because you don't agree with someone doesn't give you the right to smear them up against the wall, but that's what they're doing because they feel like, I'm empowered, I can say whatever I want, and I am a keyboard warrior. And it's like, why? What's the point? So you don't agree with them. So what? Does making them feel horrible about themselves, to making them second guess posting things online, and even to some extreme levels, making them second guess whether they should even still be alive? Does that make you feel better? Does that make you feel like a bigger person? I mean, what do you gain? What benefit is there of you just smearing somebody all because of the fact that they don't agree with what you are, or you don't agree with what they're saying? And that's the toxic sludge talking right there. Those people's responses and those people's attacks and the bullying all come from a place of toxic sludge because these people have been so brainwashed with mainstream media and politics telling you, hey, If this person doesn't agree with you on this topic, bash them. They are persona non grata. You should read them the riot act. You should just mercilessly attack them, all because they have a differentiating opinion than you. And that is horrible. That is a horrible mindset, and it's a horrible way to live. But unfortunately, nowadays, it's become very, it's run rampant throughout all aspects of social media. Facebook, I've noticed, has not, I mean, it still has its absolute sludge and bashing and bullying. Case in point, we live in Tennessee. And as I'm sure, you know, even if you don't live in Tennessee, you live in any part of the United States or even anywhere around the world, I'm sure they have this. Facebook has people who've created groups specifically tailored towards certain cities and certain areas of wherever they live. Like, you know, I'm sure if you lived in Montana, you would have like some like Facebook page saying, I love Helena. Or if you lived in North Dakota, I love Bismarck. Like these little Facebook groups that people have created where people are posting things about what's going on in their particular cities or neighborhoods. And unfortunately, rather than it just being an informative, hey guys, this is going on, or hey guys, I've got this to sell, you know, is there anybody interested? Rather than just it being an informative community melting pot of goings-ons and sales and things, it unfortunately turns into the toxic sludge seeps in, and it turns into someone asking as much as a simple question of, hey, I heard some emergency vehicles screaming down our neighborhood street. Anybody know what's going on? And they immediately get bashed. Why does it matter? It's none of your business. It's not affecting you. You need to just leave them alone. Whatever's going on, I'm sure they'll be able to handle it. And it's like, wow. All the person did was just ask you what was going on. What, you know, if you have any idea what might have been, you know, if there's a cause for concern in the neighborhood or something, because they heard all the emergency vehicles and stuff. Or another example is like there some community pages around here where we live have turned into pointing out how bad drivers are. And to the point where, hey, you know, this person cut me off in traffic today, and they took a picture of their license plate and smeared it all over the page going, hey, you so-and-so, you're a horrible driver, and I hope karma gets you, and I can't believe you did this to me. And it's like, all you're doing is spewing toxic hatred. I understand that person might have cut you off, and I understand that your morning or whatever time of day it happened might have been inconvenienced because of it, but why do you feel the need to vent your aggression on a social media forum and basically smash the crap out of that person? Does that make you feel better? I mean, I know we all need to vent. I know we all need to get our opinions and our feelings and our aggressions out. That's part of being a human. We have to find ways to do that. But you also have to find more ways constructively to do that. Because, again, does it make you feel like a bigger person? Do you feel better about yourself now that you've not only, you know, voiced how horrible of a driver that person is, but you've, you know, posted it all over social media so other people can rip them down too? Does that make you feel like a better person? Again, you know, what I want, and I would love and implore, and I'll clip this, is a call to action. I want people out there who feel like this is justified and feel like this is totally okay for them to post this kind of stuff. I want you to respond to me. I want you to tell me why. I want to get in your headspace for a moment. I want to know why. I want to know exactly what your mindset is. What are you feeling in the moment that you're posting that? What do you feel you're going to gain from that? What do you feel it's adding to the societal fabric of the nation by you doing that? And again, you know, this is not being confrontational or anything. This is me legitimately wanting to get other people's perspectives and get to the core reason why people do these things. So yeah, let me know. NFFSHOW. Tell me why. If you are one of those people that feel that smearing someone online because they don't agree with your opinion or that you don't agree with their opinion, you feel that it's okay to smear them against the wall because you don't agree with what they say. Or you feel it's okay to post those pictures and those statements about people because they're a bad driver or they cut you off or something. Tell me why. Why do you feel it's okay to do that? I want to know. I'm genuinely curious and want to know these things. So thank you in advance for those of you that actually, are bold enough to respond. So thank you. But getting back to what I was saying about social media, gone are the days where we could freely post things on Facebook, on Twitter, on MySpace, which doesn't exist anymore. And gone are those days. And it's sad because those used to be really fun places to go on a daily basis. And now, unfortunately, they don't exist anymore. And how do we fix that? How do we get things back to the way they were on social media? Well, again, all social media platforms need an overhaul. Not to say that we're trying to restrict what can and can't be said, because, that's part of freedom of speech, is being able to speak your mind. But curtailing bullying in a more stronger sense than what's currently out there right now. Community notes and all that other stuff really isn't doing much. That's a Band-Aid on an amputation. That's really not going to fix the problem. You need to start literally cutting down people's accounts. If you see someone on there who's been constantly posting the same vinegar and vitriol and just flat out being a bully, start banning the accounts. Start cutting them down. Be like, this is a safe spot where people can speak their minds and you can have open discussions and you can agree to disagree with people, but there is no place for name calling, for bashing, for wishing someone would just off themselves because, their opinion is different than yours. There's no place for that. And there shouldn't be a place for that. So we need to do a better job at curtailing those kind of accounts and those kinds of people. And even more so than that, create, obviously Facebook and Twitter and Reddit to an extent are like the bit, and, you still have your Instagram and TikTok too, of course, but those are the big named applications. But why not create another application? Create another social media platform, one that is more based on inclusivity, where you can have more than one side of a coin, where you can feel like, hey, I can converse back and forth with someone. I can have an open dialogue with someone, and I don't have to feel ashamed or afraid to post because I'm not going to be blasted to high heaven just because their opinion's different than mine. Much the same way of the political landscape. If you give people more options out there, you give people more abilities to let their voices be heard and allow people to speak their minds more freely than they do right now, because people are scared to, or people are so afraid and so taken aback by things that are said to them in response that they feel like they don't have any other recourse out there, which is going to lead me into slot number 4 here in a moment, which, it ties into mental health, because all of this toxic sludge from the top on down does nothing but infect your brain, infect your mental state, infect your judgment, and unfortunately pushes people to levels of their lives where they feel like they have no other recourse than to do something completely drastic, be it either taking their own lives, or in even more horrible cases than that, taking their own lives by way of taking out other people with them as well, in the way of mass shootings and stabbings and other senseless tragedies. So, let's dive into that. Let's dive into the 4th slot, which is social media. I'm sorry, not social media, mental health. We were just on social media. Mental health, which is a massive, 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 massive problem, not just here in the States, but worldwide. And the moment you have a mass shooting, or the moment you have any kind of a terrible tragedy like that, the moment that something like that happens, everybody immediately, or the majority of people, unfortunately, immediately go to gun grabs. Oh, we need to take away the guns. We need to take away all of this stuff. And it's like, guys, no, you don't. I mean, it's obviously gun control is a big issue, and relegating what weapons can be obtained and things like that is a big issue. But again, much like the fire hose reference I mentioned earlier, you got to stop it at the source, and the source is mental health. We've got to get the mental health crisis fixed, not just in our country, but worldwide. Because if you don't, everything else is just going to fall, and nothing will be done, and the world will continue to spiral down deeper and deeper into this void. And it, unfortunately, it stems not only from the fact that we don't have enough like psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists and people like that out there to help people who are clearly screaming out for help, but you also have to look at parental accountability as well. Not just kids, not just teenagers that are doing these shootings and things. Adults, grown adults are doing it too. And this funnels back to parental accountability, because these people are screaming out for help and they're falling on deaf ears. Either because the parents just they don't care enough to listen and see the signs, or the fact that, you've got these people out there that have 5, 6, 7 kids out there, and you shouldn't take on more responsibility than you can physically and mentally handle. And a lot of these people, not to say all of them do it for this reason, but a lot of these people, unfortunately, nowadays have 5, 6, 7 kids. And I mentioned this in the previous episode, because they want to live off the government tit. They want to live off those government checks that they get for having all of those kids and getting all of those food stamp benefits and other things like that. But I think parental accountability is a big thing towards stopping the mental health crisis. Checking in on your kids, even if the kids aren't screaming out for help, if you start to notice even the smallest signs that things might seem a little bit off, stay in touch with your kids. Follow up with them. They are your responsibility. They are there, and they're expecting you to help guide them through this massive cluster, that we call the world. And if you're not helping them, if you're not checking in with them, if you're not keeping them on the right track, you're doing them a disservice. And you can't look back on it if something was to, unfortunately go massively wrong and the kid takes out of school of his peers. You can't look back at that and go, oh, he was such a good boy or such a good girl. I didn't know, I didn't see the signs, and there was no alarm bells that went off. Bull. I guarantee you there were signs. I guarantee you there were alarms. They fell on deaf ears. And in the same vein, teachers, administrators, they're just as accountable as parents. Because the moment the parent drops that child off at school for the day, that accountability shifts from the parents to the teachers, the administrators, the principals. Everybody in that school becomes the parent for that period of time that school is going on. And it's their job to not only make sure that the child and the children there are being properly cared for and guided, but also to make sure that they're only learning content that is critical to their survival and to their that's critical to their learning abilities, and not all of this extra toxic sludge that mainstream media, social media, and the politics are trying to funnel down into the school system and into our curriculums. So again, you've gotta get that out. You gotta get that crap out. And again, that goes from the school system as a whole needing a massive overhaul. and making sure that we're only teaching them the basics: reading, writing, arithmetic, science, social studies, history, and all of history, not just we're only going to have you learn certain pieces of history, and other parts of history we're going to try to erase or act like they didn't happen when clearly they did. And that goes back to the corruptness of trying to only show people certain things, only teach people certain things that you want them to learn, that you want them to see to further your agenda. That's the toxic sludge talking right there. That agenda is the toxic sludge. And we got to get it out of all these 4 main pillars that I've mentioned. And there are additional pillars out there as well. But these are the main 4 that need to have that overhaul done on. And I feel that, with mental health, if we can get that done, if we can get our mental health crisis under control, that's going to go a long way towards getting the world back on a better track than it has been for a very long time. And I, as a father of a young kid who's, getting ready to go to school for the first time here in a couple months, I don't want him being raised in a world where he's going to be exposed to toxic sludge. And I'm going to do everything within my power to make sure, and my wife's obviously going to do it too. We're going to do everything within our power to make sure that he's being guided properly and that he's not being infected by the sludge. We're going to do everything we can to keep that sludge out of his bloodstream because he doesn't need it. And neither does the other child and kids and people that are growing up in this toxic environment that we're in right now. So to me, it's a very long process. It's a massive undertaking. It might not be something that we can accomplish within our lifetimes, but I want to be able to at least set our kids and even our grandchildren on a better path. I want to give them as much of an opportunity to be in a better world than the world that we're currently trying to survive at this moment in time. Because getting that sludge out can go all the way up and prevent wars. If that sludge wasn't around, if we were allowed to have differentiating opinions without immediately having to try to kill somebody else just because they don't agree with what we're talking about, you could stop wars if you had that ability to have open discussions without it immediately escalating to a violent end. Getting that sludge out of the world's bloodstream could fix so many problems on a grand scale. And that's what we need to do as a society. That's what we need to do as a world. And again, it's a massive undertaking, but you got to start one piece at a time. You don't obviously have to try to get everything done at once. Find a little spot here or there and get the sludge out and then move on to something else and get it rolling like a massive snowball. And you could create an avalanche in no time, especially with the reach of social media being what it is nowadays. The ability to have videos and clips and things going viral, and in a good way, not viral in a bad way with the sludge, but in a good way, is easy. It's pretty easy if you know what you're doing. It's pretty easy if you have a good message. And unfortunately, the things that go viral right now are things that are not of much substance. Like your TikTok dance trends and things like that. You get, I got 3 million views on my 15-second little dance routine I did. Yeah, but what is that doing? I mean, great. I'm glad that you're able to share that with the world. More power to you. But in the grand scheme of things, what is that doing to help fix problems? And obviously, it's not everyone's responsibility to fix the world's problems, but at the same time, it is everyone's responsibility to do whatever they can do to leave this world in better shape when they're done than what it was like when they got here. That should always be the mindset. Leave the environment you're in a better state than than it was in when you first got there. Because otherwise, things will never get better. We will never improve, or we will never grow and be able to be the world that we should be and need to be. Because there's reasons why we're on the brink of World War III right now. And a lot of it has to do with people's opinions not jiving with others. And the toxic sludge saying, China is our enemy. We hate them because that's what the government's telling us to do. Or Iran is our enemy. We hate them. Or Iran saying, death to America, death to Israel, because that's what the corrupt government is telling them and forcing them to believe. And that's what mainstream media is forcing us to believe. And that's what social media is forcing us to believe. And there's people out there, such as myself, for an example, that don't buy it, that see through the sludge. And what needs to happen is there needs to be more people that have that same viewpoint, that are able to see through the sludge, that are able to see through and see things the way they should be seen, and not with these rose-colored, toxic, corrupt glasses that are on there, that are currently being shoved down to people's faces left and right. Because they call it fear-mongering, where mainstream media, politics, social media, they're all telling you, be scared of XYZ, be scared of this. This country is going to do this to you, or North Korea is going to, is going to bomb us because And it's all fear-mongering. That's exactly what it is. They want to keep you dumbed down, scared, and blind and asleep to what's truly going on in the world. And by doing that, they can control you. You're a walking meat sack with a big antenna sticking out the back of your head, and all that sludge is just being pumped into you. Like if you've ever seen the movie The Matrix, when they all sit in their little seats in their little bridge area, and they all go to sleep, and they all go into the Matrix. They all plug themselves in, and then all the stuff gets fed into them, and then that's their world. That's literally what's happening with our world right now. When people say we're living in the Matrix, they're accurate in that aspect. That unfortunately we have antennas in the back of our head, and all that sludge, they're trying to feed that sludge into the back of our heads. Thankfully, it's not working for everybody, but for a lot of people, unfortunately, it is. And the world will never heal. The world will never be free of the toxic sludge as long as people allow it to continue. And we need to find a way, even in the smallest form. It has to start somewhere. We have to start somewhere to get things back on the right track. And this is why I'm sending out another call to action to you guys out there in social media and the universe. I want to know your thoughts. I want to know if you are the doctor and the earth, the very sick, toxic, sludge-induced earth, is your patient. How would you get that sludge out of the bloodstream? How would you get the world back on the right track to being healthy, prosperous, and thriving for all 7 billion plus people that currently call this floating rock home? Tell me what you would do. I want to know. I crave your thoughts, your viewpoints, your feedback. So again, reach out to me, NFF SHOW, NFF Show, on all social media platforms: TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit. I want to know your opinions. I want to know, you are the doctor, the world is your patient. It is infected with toxic sludge. How would you set out to get the sludge out of the bloodstream and get the earth back to a healthy state? What would you do? Where would you start? Would you start with the top part, with the government? Would you try and do some of the smaller stuff first? Social media, mainstream media, mental health, knowing full well, though, that that big one is still up there trying to pump stuff back down. How would you do it? Let me know. NFFSHOW. I want to know. I appreciate all of your feedback. I want to know your opinions and thoughts on that. So thank you guys very much in advance for that and for your insight on this issue. But for now, I think we've covered everything we need to cover on this episode from a solution standpoint. Again, this is not something that's going to be done tomorrow. It's not going to be something that's going to be done within a year. But it is, we can make changes. Things can change. Things can get better. We just got to find ways to start, even in this, make the smallest inroads possible. We can do it because we, as humans, have the capability. We have the mental fortitude. We have the wherewithal to be able to make these changes. But we've got to start somewhere. So again, thank you guys so much for listening to me here on this solution-based episode of the No Filter Friday show. Next week we might have, I'm still also just a little administrative information here. I'm still looking for a permanent co-host. I love being able to talk about things that are passionate to me and things that are going on in the world, but I also love the ability to riff with other people back and forth, have a conversation, have a banter. So I'm looking for a permanent co-host. My friends from the Geeks from the Multiverse, I enjoyed collaborating with them. I can't wait to collaborate with them again. But right now I'm looking for a permanent co-host, someone that can give me some good ideas, some fresh perspectives, and someone that I gel with and riff with back and forth on a weekly basis. If that is you, again, please reach out to me on all social media platforms, NFFSHOW. That's NFF show. Let me know if you're interested in being a permanent co-host. What do you have for a background? You know, what are your interests? Have you been a co-host? Have you been on a podcast before? Do you have any clips or reels or anything you could send me? Let me know. I would love to have a permanent co-host here within the next couple episodes or so. And start riffing and really start trying to branch things out. I think it would be amazing. I think we would have some really great conversations. We might butt heads from time to time, but that's my point. Butting heads and having a difference in opinion is great, as long as you can do it without screaming at each other or wishing someone would no longer be alive. So again, if you're interested in being a permanent co-host of the show with me, reach out to me, NFFSHOW. Thank you very, very much. And I look forward to hearing from you guys as soon as possible regarding those opportunities. But for now, I'm going to end this here and wrap it up. Of course, this has been the No Filter Friday show. I, of course, am John Kanopic. You can catch this on all social media platforms. I am on Spotify. I am on Podbean, iHeart, Amazon, Apple, or wherever you may find your podcast feeds. And of course, this will be simulcast as a video on YouTube as well. We'll be dropping it again on Friday at 5 p.m. Central, and I'll be dropping clips throughout the week as well on all social media platforms. And again, guys, thank you so much for all of your feedback, all of your comments, all of your suggestions. It is greatly appreciated. You help drive this show. You help keep my my brain functioning. I crave knowledge. I crave information, and you guys definitely give me that and then some. So thank you guys so much for all of your support, all of your feedback. And I look forward to continuing on this crazy journey with you guys as time goes along. But for now, let's wrap this up. This, of course, has been the No Filter Friday show. I am John Kanopic. This has been an amazing journey down the social media platforms across the world. And I look forward to going on the next journey with you guys here next week. And as always, guys, the way I always wrap up every one of my shows, ladies and gentlemen, take my advice. Pull down your pants and slide on the ice. Love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week. Stay safe. Be nice to each other. Have open dialogues. Love you lots. And we'll see you guys on the next one. Adios.